Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo. I am very excited today because we're starting a brand new area. We now have over 600 animals at San Bernardino, and with a few exceptions, they all live in hot places. Well, today that changes. We are starting the Frozen North, a huge area themed around the icy north of America. This is where we're going to be building, in the space between sea lion shores and Africa. And as you can see, there is a lot of space to fill, so let's get started. We're going to begin with some terraforming, lots of terraforming, and the reason we're going to be doing lots of it is to overcome probably the biggest issue with building this area, which is how do you build a frozen Arctic area in a zoo set in Southern California? It's not exactly conducive to that kind of build in this climate. So we're going to be doing a lot of terraforming and rock work to try and transform this landscape as much as possible into an Arctic-style landscape. So the concept for this area is that it is going to be representing the frozen northern wastelands of North America, so Alaska, northern Canada, those kind of places. Now, happily, those places do have summer. I've not been as far north as the Arctic, but I've spent some time in Iceland and Norway, and I was wearing a t-shirt most of the time because it was summer, and that's the look that we're going to try and go for here. That means that we don't have to put the whole thing inside, so I find it's really, really difficult to make immersive indoor habitats, especially if you're going to be on a massive area like this. It would be such an enormous building, and trying to make the whole thing like a sort of landscaped interior Arctic would just be impractical. I don't think I've seen that in a zoo anywhere. We're going to build this outside. It's also going to make it much, much nicer if it's outside, because Planet Zoo's lighting engine is incredible outdoors and less incredible indoors, shall we say. This big hill that we're building here is going to be the climax of the area and will feature two massive polar bear habitats. And I mean massive. These are going to be big enough to keep Planet Zoo happy in franchise mode, and big enough to keep me happy with the polar bears, because if there's one animal I see in terrible, terrible habitats quite a lot, it is polar bears. They need so much space, and I've been to quite a few zoos that keep them in very unsuitable circumstances, including some of the best zoos I've ever seen. I saw a particularly poor habitat for them at Prague Zoo recently, although to be fair to them, they are in the middle of building an absolutely enormous habitat to replace it. The best habitat I've seen for polar bears is at Yorkshire Wildlife Park here in the UK. I think they have about 8 polar bears, normally 2 or 3 to a habitat, and each habitat is essentially an enormous field. Most of them have a lake in it. The lake in itself is vastly bigger than most polar bear habitats I've seen, and then surrounding that lake is an enormous field of rocks. It's absolutely amazing, and every time I go there, the polar bears seem to be having the time of their lives, playing with their enrichment items, wandering around the habitat, swimming. I've never seen any sort of stereotypical behaviour there like you get with bears when they are not kept in the correct conditions, and I want to go for something on that scale here, with a large indoor area as well to escape the worst of the Californian heat. And I'll go into how we're going to keep the animals cool in a bit more detail later. But for now, let's talk about what we're actually doing. So we're using the little transport trick that we use quite often to get some really smooth slopes going up here. And once we've got the track in the right place, we will delete it, and that'll leave us with some smooth terrain that we can put paths over. The hill itself is pretty rough. I'm going to be going in and detailing it as we go. It's such a vast area. I want to get the paths and stuff done first, and then we're going to go in and adjust everything in each habitat so that we can get the perfect sight lines and everything else that we want in this area. Next up, we're going to go in and start filling this in with trees, loads of different evergreen trees to really get that northern feel here. You can see that some of the trees are actually flashing red when I try and place them down, like this one here. And the reason for that is because we have actually hit the edge of the map, something I did not think I would be doing when I started this zoo. And in terms of the particular trees that we're using, I remember when I was a kid I went to the south of France, and my tiny little mind was blown by the fact that there were pine trees everywhere, because I always associated those with cold areas in nature documentaries and things like that. I didn't realise that you got them in hot climates. So I don't know if these exact species of trees would work here or not, but something along these lines you can certainly grow in hot climates as well as cold climates, and this is going to really sell the background as guests are walking around this area. Here we go, here's the tree line. I think especially with the hill in front of it, it looks pretty imposing. It's going to make a great backdrop for this area. Let's move on and get some paths in. While we place the paths, I'll tell you a little bit more about how the Frozen North area is going to work. Inspired by an amazing Amazon area I saw built by Wyatt Andrews' workshop, I want to make this the best and most immersive area in the entire zoo. And the way I'm going to do that is instead of sticking to the usual format of having one completed habitat in every episode, what I want to do is just work on this area as much as possible through the course of the week, and then at the end of the week, whatever I have got done, I'm going to show you in the episode. That way I can spend just as long on the signage and the entrances and all the parts in between the habitats as I do on the habitats themselves, and we should have the best area in the zoo. That's the plan, and this is where the frozen north joins onto the islands. Let's take a look at it from above. You can see we've got an entrance from Africa on the left and the entrance from the islands on the right. I'm liking how this area looks already, and what I want to get done in the rest of this episode is the entrance. In keeping with the level of detail that I want to have in this part of the zoo, I'm going to create some custom rock formations. So rather than just using the faux rocks like we do normally, I want to mix in some of the real rocks with the faux rocks and try and get some really realistic textures going on here, get a kind of Arctic vibe going on with the way the rocks look. So we're going to be chucking loads of normal rocks into one of the large faux rocks and just having them peek through in certain places. We're going to match the colour up as exactly as possible, and we'll end up with something that looks really realistic. Once I'm happy with this one piece of rock, then we can use this to build big jagged teeth of rocks to place around. We can use it to build rock walls to go at the back of habitats, and some traditional North American Arctic architecture as well, which we'll get onto a bit later. In terms of architecture, the main influence is going to be the Alaskan town of Nome, which has got a really interesting history and really interesting buildings. We'll discuss that more when we start building them. Here's the first of the rock structures. Really like these. These are going to go all over this area, along with something very rare in this zoo, a couple of workshop items. These incredible skeletons are both by the amazing Carlos, who's one of Planet Zoo's best builders. There's a mammoth, which is very appropriate for this North American area, and a Paleoloxodont, which is not appropriate at all for this area, but it looks like a mammoth, and these are the two best skeletons on the workshop, so this is what I'm going with. These are going to be some of the first things you see when you come into the area. Now, it's probably about time we did some actual building, so let's get an entrance sign built. This is going to be based on a photo I saw of the entrance sign for a different town in Alaska, which I really liked, and we're just going to modify it to suit our needs and announce the beginning of the frozen north. So appropriate enough, we're going to use one of Wyatt's fonts to do this. I really like this font, we've used it before. My only issue with it is that the O is a little perfect for the kind of vibe that we're going for here. So I'm going to make some modifications to the O so it almost looks like it's melting. I think that will fit the vibe nicely, and then we'll finish it off and then turn it into a sign. So I've got a plank here, can't remember exactly which plank this is, there are so many planks in the game now, but we're going to use this to make the backdrop to the sign. So we'll drop one in here, and then we'll spin it round so they don't all look the same, and position this exactly underneath the other one. And we'll do that a few more times until we've got the back of the sign complete like this. Get it centered, and then we can start doing some detailing. So what I'm going to do is take this little polar bear sign from the Arctic pack, and we'll recolor this so it snugly fits into the sign, and then we can just drop it in along here and make it look like we've just got a polar bear painted on here. We've got these sort of attachments on the side of the sign. We'll cover that up with some more wood because I want a border on the sign anyway. There's a red border on the sign I'm basing this on, so we'll just do the same thing here, and then we can move the polar bear into place and then duplicate that and get one on the other side so we get some nice symmetry. And while we do that, let's talk about the rest of the animals that we're going to have in this area. So at the moment, the plan is that we're going to have pretty much where we are here. The first habitat that you come to will be for the cougar. I have never built a cougar habitat, so looking forward to that. Nestled below the hill where the polar bears are will be a very cute little habitat for the Arctic fox. On the other side, we're going to have habitats for reindeer and potentially Dall sheep. And then finally, we're going to have the wolverine. So many of these animals I've never built habitats for before. It was really difficult to choose which ones to go with. We might even add more. I'd quite like to get wolves in, but we will see. I've based the animal choices on animals that live in the northern part of America, but I'd love to know what animals you guys want to see in here because there are so many to choose from. I get the feeling this area might get even larger as we build it. Let's get some plants in now and start making this part of the entrance look beautiful. I'm basing this on the plants that were growing around the sign outside the town. As I've said many times on this channel, I am not a botanist, so if you see anything here that looks wildly unrealistic, like there's not even plants that look a bit like this that would grow in California, there will be sprinklers all over this area to keep them growing. Let me know in the comments, maybe I can make some changes. Let's get those statues in. These look so good already. What I'm going to do is place them down and then use the rock pile that we built as a base for them. So we're going to move this roughly into position here, And then I'm basically just going to go in and adjust each rock in this pile so that it is exactly positioned under the feet of this statue, so that it's not clipping into it. Took a long time to do this, but I really wanted a kind of a natural look to it. With enough adjustments, we've got the mammoth standing exactly on the rocks, which is what we want to see, and looking good. Next up, we're going to do another sign using a very different technique. This is a photo I saw when I was doing my research. I absolutely loved the sign and the vibe that it gives off, so we're going to recreate this. The problem with putting the sign on a TV screen is that it's lit up and it looks very much like a sign on a TV screen, not an actual sign. So what we're going to do is use these billboards which aren't lit and then split the image into two so that we can have half the image on this square here, like so. And then we'll put the other half of the image on another billboard. You can see how much more realistic the sign looks when it's on these billboards. So we'll just slide this one so it's in the right place. There we go. The problem now is that the billboard behind it is too big, but I really want the rounded edges on the TV screen. So we're going to delete this large TV screen and then get the smallest TV screen. We'll put that in, and then we're going to hide this behind these two billboards so that we can get that curved edge. If we get enough of these in and we position them in the right place, we'll end up with something that really looks like a road sign rather than a TV screen. I'll do some adjustments to the darkness on the image as well so that we can get the grey bits at the side to fade into that black. But this is looking really cool already. We're going to get some planks behind it. This is what the original looked like. It's a really unique sign somewhere in Alaska warning you not to use the road unless you absolutely have to. I just love that idea. And then we're going to use the hinge piece. So you can see in the billboard image that I've used that there are some nails here keeping the sign on the planks. So I'm just going to cover those nails up with the smallest hinge piece. So we've got some actual three-dimensional nails in here. And this is the sort of level of detail that I want to go to throughout this build to get everything looking as good as possible. We've got this really gothic twilight piece, which if you sink it into just the right place, it gives us a really nice stand for the sign. So we'll copy this onto the other side as well. And then finally, we'll get some more of the hinge nails in so that everything is nailed together. And to set it into the landscape properly, we'll get some sandbags around the legs so that it stands up to the immense Arctic winds that we are not going to be seeing in Southern California. Once we've got the sandbags done, we're going to move on to some detailing on the paths. And we'll start that with the franchise masters. So you may want to line the paths in your zoo, and if you've seen the curbs on most of the paths, you probably will want to, then this is the easiest way to do it. We take the longest of the thin rock cladding pieces and make sure the end that you're working with is the end that has the controls on it. And then you just move it down the path. You can use rotate to line it up with the path exactly. And if you make sure that you're dragging it from the end with the controls on, it is super simple to rotate it into place. And you can very quickly line the side of the path and get a much better look than you would do using the curbs. Hope that's useful. Let's move on to some real Arctic building now. This is the architecture / artwork that the Inuit make, which is called, I'm probably going to murder the pronunciation here, Inuksuk. It's basically a pile of rocks, which I naively thought would be very, very easy to build in Planet Zoo. Turns out it's actually incredibly difficult, and this took so much longer than it looks like it took on here. But basically what you need is rocks that have at least one, preferably two flat edges, so you can balance them on top of each other and make a big structure which they use as sort of waypoint markers, and potentially just because they look awesome. And the issue with making them in Planet Zoo is there's really only about 4 rocks that have flat edges. 2 of them are absolutely enormous and 2 of them are absolutely tiny. So it was really difficult to do, and I had to kind of cheat a bit. In lots of places these rocks wouldn't really be balanced on top of each other, but it looks pretty good in the final product. So while I carry on going crazy with these rocks, I just want to address something that came up in quite a few of the comments in the last episode. So I mentioned that I'd set aside a small area of the zoo for the next DLC, and I got quite a lot of comments along the lines of, aha, so he knows what's in the next DLC. So I just wanted to let you know I have absolutely no idea what is in the next DLC. All I know is what Frontier have announced in public, which is that there will be one, and it will be an animal pack. We don't even know what animal pack means these days though. It used to be 8 animals, but now since the Barnyard animal pack came out, could be 7 animals and some building pieces. Could be pretty much anything, we just don't know. All I've done is set aside a little bit of the zoo to make sure that there is space for any cool new animals in the next DLC, but yeah, I don't know what it's going to be. That's the first of the Inuksuks done. You'll see those properly in the end cinematics. Let's move on to the last thing that we're going to build today, which is a little picnic area just by the entrance. A figure with the flowers and the huge mammoth skeletons. This would be a great little spot to sit down and have a bite to eat. So we're going to put some picnic tables in here. I might get a food court in here, But I do want one of the monorail stations to be at the entrance to the Frozen North, so not sure if we'll have room for that. We'll also use some of these amazing pieces from the Arctic Pack to cover up the back of the sea lion habitat so they don't spoil the view. That's the first part of this massive build done. Let's take a look at it. That looks really good. Very happy with that. I want to thank Carlos again for putting that mammoth skeleton on the workshop. It looks amazing. We've got some of our new signs in as well, showing people where things are going to be. Made a little don't touch sign as well to put in front of the statues. This is the little picnic area. I'm not sure about those Arctic shades. I don't think they fit the theme, so they'll be going. We've got the slightly less geographically accurate skeleton here. And here is the sign that we made. This is one of my favorite bits of this little build so far. And here is a few of the rocks and the Inuksuk which are sat in the middle of this area. You can see the flying fox forest in the background. Let's head up into the drone cam and see how far we've come today. This is where we started at the beginning of the episode, and this is where we are now. That is a lot of building. I know it's mostly terrain work, trees and rocks, but it's so important to get this part of it right, and I really want that level of detail in everything that we're building here. Next week, we're going to be adding the first animals. I'm not going to say which ones, so you'll just have to wait to find out. We'll take a quick look at the members monolith. Thank you so much to all of you for joining. Hit the join button on the channel if we want to see your name up here, and I'll see you again next week for some more Planet Zoo. Thanks for watching. Bye.